The elderly in the village came and said to them, "They've dug in 3 different spots in the field, and they were in the middle of another spot." The elderly couldn't understand how farmers were gold mining in the soybean field. So, they were so confused that they thought, it's the end of the world. The elderly blamed You-Jeong and Soo-jae for digging up the soybean field by pointing at them with their cane. "You guys'll be struck by lightning." The elderly cursed at them. "It's none of your business," You-Jeong said. You-Jeong dumped the dirt out of the backpack with anger spit, then went back to the tunnel. He became confused because he's messing up his soybean field without any guarantee finding gold. He's also worried about his rice field that he has abandoned. He can't even sleep at night. But Soo-jae doesn't seem to have any worries. He's reluctantly digging in the tunnel. "You think we can find the vein of gold soon?" You-Jeong asked Soo-jae. "Of course, we can. I bet my life on it," Soo-jae assured him. You-Jeong felt better after listening to Soo-jae's response because Soo-jae wouldn't do this much effort if he didn't think he can find gold. So, You-Jeong decided not to be distracted by his worries and to focus on finding gold. It was a dark night. Dogs were barking somewhere. Covered in mud, You-Jeong went back home from gold mining. He was exhausted. He was quite beat and sat on the floor of his room. No gold today again. His wife became depressed. She has actually bragged to people that she'd buy a new house with gold soon. But that didn't happen yet. She's so ashamed these days that she can't face anyone. She made dinner for You-Jeong and said to him, "This is the last food we borrowed. There's no rice left. We got to have a ritual service for the god of the mountain early next morning. Why don't you borrow some more rice for the service?" You-Jeong said. After You-Jeong asked his wife for borrowing more rice, he lied down on the floor in the room and closed his eyes. "There isn't any rice left for us, let alone the ritual service," she complained. "Shut the hell up," You-Jeong shouted. She flinched. She thought that You-Jeong was so sensitive these days that he got angry at her often. She also knew that You-Jeong couldn't have a proper sleep these days, but she didn't understand him yelling at their crying baby. Now that You-Jeong didn't eat dinner, his wife cleared the table. She's borrowed food from You-Jeong Kim, but hasn't paid back yet. So, she's ashamed, but she has no choice but to ask You-Jeong Kim for more rice. It was very hard for his wife to ask for more favor from You-Jeong Kim. "We actually have no rice for the ritual service for the god of mountains early tomorrow morning. Would you please? Don't worry. We can help you. Make sure that you never miss the rite under any circumstances," the husband of You-Jeong Kim said. The young Kim-K's husband understood how much You-Jeong and his wife needed the help of God to find gold. So he was willing to give her rice. No doubt You-Jeong Kim and her husband are very kind. "You should have the ritual service with sincerity, or the god will be upset," You-Jeong Kim's husband said as he gave her rice. On her way back, her face turned red with sorriness, as well as appreciation. She envied them, because they were well off. You-Jeong Kim's husband is pretty good at finding gold in the mine. He makes between 0.71 and 3.1 a day every day in the gold mine. He can afford to do several things with that money, such as buying rice, fabric, making rice cakes, or even giving loans to people. Compared to them, she's very sorry for having such an awful life like that. She prepared to make rice cake after arrived home. But she's worried how she'd make porridge for her family tomorrow with the lack of rice. Crouching down in the corner of the room, She leered at her husband lying on the other side. Thinking of Yang Gin Dake's husband. She's so pissed off that her husband can even find a small piece of gold, even though he's ruining his soybean field. She sighed unconsciously, thinking that her husband was worthless. While You-Jeong and his wife began to make rice cake at that late night. While You-Jeong pounded rice into flour. But there wasn't a sieve, one of the tools that they needed in order to make rice cake. So his wife had to wander from place to borrow that, and she was exhausted when she came back home with a sieve. Hey, do you just sit and do nothing? Why didn't you make a fire in the meantime? His wife complained. She thought it was unfair for her to be busy alone. So she began to nag when she cut and gave withered branches to her husband, who was making fire. They finally finished making the rice cakes only after the rooster crowed twice in the early morning. Now, they're heading for the ritual service in the soybean field. While You-Jeong carried a futon in his arms and his wife carried the basket of rice cake on her head. The soybean field was located at the foot of the mountain. The mountain looked big and dark at dawn. Selkovis and jujube trees were lowering their branches along the side of the soybean field. As You-Jeong approached the end of the field that faced the mountain, he stopped and turned to his wife and said, "Give me the rice cake basket, and you just stay there." While You-Jeong was moving to the ritual service spot all by himself. When he went around the pile of dirt, he tripped on a stone and almost fell down. His wife rushed to help him unconsciously. "Shit. I told you to stay away. Females can bring misfortune, bitch," while You-Jeong said, slapping her in the face. Then he angrily walked to the ritual service spot. After unfolding the futon, he put down the basket of rice cake. Then he made a deep bow twice. "Please have mercy on us. We can't live without your help," he prayed with his hands together. While You-Jeong made her upset because he has become violent since he started gold mining. She didn't like the change even though she understood that he's under a lot of stress. She was so angry that she didn't even want him to find gold at all. Things turned out to be the way that she'd wanted. While You-Jeong was digging in the tunnel day and night, but he hasn't been able to find gold for the last 10 days after the ritual service. When he came home now and then, he looked sick with his shoulders slumping and a pale face. "I wish I'd die," while You-Jeong sighed, plopping down on the ground. His wife's on her way taking lunchbox to her husband, and Soo-jae with her baby on her back. Her baby was happy being outside with his mom. Now, she can't think of buying a pair of white rubber shoes or eating cooked pollock. Furthermore, the word gold makes her sick. She just wants her family to be stable enough not to borrow any more rice. Everything turns yellow in the fields in autumn. It's a time for farmers to have happy chats with each other. But while You-Jeong ruined his soybean field and rice field, so he's worried about how to support his family this year. While You-Jeong is so ashamed that he can't face anyone anymore. His wife found while You-Jeong and Soo-jae sitting with their backs turned against each other. They seemed to have a fight again. They were looking away, just smoking. "Here's your lunch," his wife said. While You-Jeong had scratches on his face and his clothes were torn. He was looking in the distance with his sleeves rolled up. He didn't speak. Soo-jae was covered in dirt. There was dry blood under his nose, but still bleeding a little bit. While You-Jeong was abashed and turned away from his wife. His wife didn't like both of them because all they did was just digging for nothing and often ended up fighting. "When do you think we can pay back the rice we borrow for the ritual service?" his wife asked while You-Jeong. While You-Jeong didn't answer. His ignorance made her angry, So she raised her voice and said, "Then, why did you tell me to borrow rice, if you can't pay back?" While Yuenjiasake, who was already angry from the last fight, got angrier. He sprang to his feet and hit her head with his fist. "You useless bitch!" While Yuenjiasake yelled. His wife got so hurt that she couldn't say anything. But she gave her baby, who was on her back, to Yuenjiasake. Then she turned around and talked to herself. What kind of idiot would try to dig for gold in the soybean field? She insulted him. "What did you say?" While Yuenjiasake slapped her across her face. While Yuenjiasake complained that his wife made him more upset rather than consoling him. "Damn it. That's it. I can't live with you anymore. Get out of my face." While Yuenjiasake shouted at her again. He pushed his wife to the edge of the field and kicked the side of her. "Ugh!" She screamed in pain. "You pushed me to do it. Remember, bitch." He hit her again. Soo-jae got worried because they could take their anger out on him. That seemed to have a problem. Soo-jae had to do anything to get himself out of trouble. He sneaked into the tunnel. It was typical autumn sunny day. The soybeans were lying on the field without any care. There's a group of happy farmers in the rice field who were singing with good harvest in the distance. "Gold! Gold!" Soo-jae shouted coming out of the tunnel. He was pop-eyed with surprise. There was a handful of dirt in his hands. "What?" While Yuenjiasake asked in astonishment. "Gold," Soo-jae answered. "Shit," while Yuenjiasake said as he rushed to Soo-jae. While Yuenjiasake took the dirt from Soo-jae's hand and checked it closely. That was the red clay which Yuenjiasake has never found since digging. Tears sprang to his eyes and asked Yuenjiasake, "Is there gold in this dirt?" "Of course, man. That's the vein of gold. There should be 5 tons of gold at least per 1 pole bag of the gold vein dirt," Soo-jae answered. While Yuenjiasake had mixed feelings. He didn't know how to respond. He was just looking Soo-jae absent-mindedly. "Come on, come over here. This is gold." While Yuenjiasake called his wife. "What did I say to you? It was my call," she shouted with joy. She looked cute too while Yuenjiasake. After wiped her tears, while Yuenjiasake was jumping with joy. And then he went into the tunnel. "There's gold in there, right?" While Yuenjiasake's wife asked Soo-jae, thinking of herself eating pollock in a fancy big house. "Sure, we can make 51 per 1 bag of this gold vein dirt," Soo-jae answered. But Soo-jae decided to quietly run away that night.